alone, and with you only time will always be our friend. Reaching far to find a star, our destiny is never said. Making known this loving tone will never find the two of us. We will always reminisce, kissing in the love. All right, welcome back to the Soulful Afro Show with Miss Yvette and our special guest, Miss Chio Manager.
Thank you, Hassan. She's back. She's back, and whenever she's back, I know it's always going to be good. So welcome, my
high expectations.
Hey, you create those with your brilliant mind. This is a brilliant mind we have with us. I would say one of the most respected advocates as it relates to African immigrant refugee issues in Boston. So if you want to know what's going on, this person to tap. So before we jump in, before we get into that community update with what you're doing, there's been a lot going on in Boston, specifically around community issues. One of the things we rallied this week, some of my colleagues from the Conwin Square NDC for America's Food Basket in Fields Corner. And it connects to the issue of right to remain, the whole displacement issue, because here's the supermarket that has a long-term lease, 10-year lease. They fell behind a couple weeks in writing like their letter to say, we're going to keep it up. And the landlord, from our version and the way I see it, is that the landlord then takes that time frame, that loophole, and brings in another supermarket. And by the time the folks from America's Food Basket get in touch with him, he has already signed a new lease with what will be coming into that space, which is another Save-A-Lot.
Another Save-A-Lot.
And what it does is you're removing a community family supermarket for a larger chain, which cannot guarantee that it's going to be any better than what you have now. And you're not doing anything to save the jobs of the folks that have been working at America's Food Basket for so long. So now these folks are out of jobs, and you give them only till August 31st to get out because of that transition. And my position on this, and some of the advocates that were out there rallying, is that it's an issue of displacement and an issue of discrimination, because if you want to read more about it in the Dorchester Reporter, there's an article. It actually comes across as the landlord, the owner planned this, because the person coming in from Save-A-Lot is someone that his family owned business in the area years ago. So he's excited about coming back in. So that's where the issue of discrimination and displacement come in. So we need to pay attention to the issue of displacement and discrimination is not just about your permanent living, it's about our community as a whole, because once they start moving us out from our apartments and we can't afford the rents and we can't live in the communities that we want to live in, the stores aren't going to be able to stay there either. And here's a prime example. The more local stores won't be able to compete against the big chains or the big money restaurants that are trying to come in, because the rents are too high for them to stay.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it reminds me of what happened in JP.
Absolutely.
With, Whole Foods. It was a little bit different of dynamics, right? Because the family was ready to sort of let go, and the community wanted to make sure that it was still a localized supermarket, and there was a big sort of rally and a lot of things happening around Whole Foods coming in, because Whole Foods, one, has higher prices.
Exactly.
There are a lot of corner stores in that area that cannot compete with maybe what Whole Foods is able to offer, like the hot foods, the organic foods. And then people were also concerned about
the jobs,
the people's jobs, and how can Whole Foods become more of a community supermarket. Now, I know they did a lot of work. There's a lot of advocacy that happened, and Whole Foods did a lot of work on trying to support that transition. But I think it's a little bit different, because the owners of High Low were ready to move on. Versus this one is more in terms of they are not ready to move on, and they missed the due date or whatever the circumstances. But I think the comment, so it's two layers for me, right? So one is, what are the rights of
the current America's Food Basket,
as it relates to the situation,
Yep.
right?
And
how just is the owner at telling them that they have to leave.
Yeah.
Now that's a legal question.
Exactly.
That's something that I can talk about.
Yeah.
But if in the contract it does say that, it's going to be hard to debate that, right? But the second piece is if you have a new grocery store coming in that's not new to black and brown communities, black and Latino communities, because there's one right over on Warren Street that I have to say I don't really care for because of the environment, because the store's sort of way in which the store is being run, right? But if there's a new supermarket coming in, then the question is, what responsibility do they have to the local community? Now, there are a lot of things that they can do to ensure that the local community is respected, to ensure that individuals who work there still have their jobs, or to ensure that they are more welcoming, to ensure that they are grounded in what the local community wants. There's a lot of things they can do.
Exactly. And they haven't even approached, they haven't even had that conversation. And August 31st is a week from tomorrow, so you have these folks that have been there for so long, just absolutely anxious of what their next steps is. But it creates we need to become more aware. We don't, like being out there on Friday, folks are like, oh, what is,
what's going on,
and not wanting to get involved because of fear of retaliation. Be like, you have the right to demonstrate. You have the right to speak up. This is your job that you're fighting for. This is your market that you're fighting for. So we need to become more aware of the issue of what is happening in our community. Right now, Dorchester is one of the highest turnover of displacements in the country.
Oh, really?
Yes. So we need to pay attention to what's happening in Dorchester. That's why, it's one of our key issues that we're addressing, is because you have the Fannie Mae's and the banks, the city realties that are owning all these properties and making the rents extremely high, that people cannot live in. This is happening all over. There was a case that's going on in East Boston that, the folks have been marching about. Houses in Roxbury.
Oh, most definitely.
Roxbury's almost gone already. Almost gone. So these are some of the community issues that I think we need to speak on. And then, what is happening to black and brown people. And then this brings what you're here for today is, what are the issues that we're addressing around health, around housing, because these are the things that are affecting us at a high rate. When these issues come up, we're at the top of the ones being mostly affected. And today you are here to talk about the National African Immigrant and Refugee HIV/AIDS and Hepatitis.
I like how that just popped up.
Awareness Day. And if you're looking at the show, if you're on video, you can see that there's a special Facebook page for this event that Chioma and her team have set up, National African Immigrant and Refugee HIV/AIDS and Hepatitis Awareness Day. And you can find it on the Africa Radio Online Facebook page, and you will find it later on the Soulful Afro with Yvette page. So you will have all of these different links to become more aware. So tell us more about this day.
Well, I think it links directly to what you were talking about. I think one of the things I know is that we have to start mobilizing within our communities. We've always done that, right? It's just sort of been a part. I feel like there's certain things that brown and black folks do just because it's ingrained in our DNA. And mobilizing, resilience, fighting, understanding the struggle is something that's a part of our DNA. And so this is just, another way in which we do it. I think it becomes a little bit different when we start looking at subpopulations within black and brown communities, right? Because often we're all grouped all together, which is necessary as we start thinking about political moves, right? But even within political moves, we need to understand what is needed within our sub-communities, right? And so one of our sub-communities as black folks is African immigrants.
Okay.
And so African immigrants are individuals who come from the continent of Africa, representing any one of the countries of Africa.
Okay.
And so that community is a growing population, not only here in Massachusetts, but also throughout the U.S., particularly in metropolitan cities. So we're talking about New York, we're talking about D.C., Atlanta, here in Boston, plus places on the West Coast. And so, what we are seeing is that there's a gap in a national movement to address some of the needs for African immigrants. Okay. And so because my area is HIV and AIDS, I've been able to look more closely at some health issues. And HIV and AIDS is definitely one of the biggest.
Is that in the African
immigrant population?
Okay. Very specific to that community.
Right,
okay.
Very specific to that community. And it's only been recent, maybe within the past 5 years, that there's been even an examination of the HIV/AIDS rates from a very number-based model, right?
What are the numbers? What are some of the numbers that you can share with us today?
Yeah, so there was an article that sort of has set the pace for this work, right? And it was done by Karani in 2008. And what she did was she took HIV surveillance data from major cities, major states, excuse me, and Boston was one of them. And she looked at the data within Black populations, and then looked at the data within foreign-born Blacks, and then Africans. And so basically what came out of that, and that was about 8 metropolitan sort of jurisdictions, is that African immigrants are 6 times more likely to have HIV and compared to U.S. born Blacks, right? So African Americans would much be defined as African Americans. There are distinctly 3 differences between African immigrants and U.S. born Blacks, right? One is that African immigrants tend to be impacted at a much harder rate because once an African immigrant is diagnosed with HIV, within 2 to 3 months that person has AIDS. All right, so that tells us
why is that? Why is the turnover that happening so quickly?
Diagnosis is what we call it. And what typically are some of the reasons why? Of course, we're still looking at this because, like I said, it's a new area. Is that African immigrants are presenting late, right? Because of stigma. Not getting tested for various reasons. I have, even in my own program, community members telling me, since they're here in the U.S., HIV/AIDS is a big issue. So not really understanding the context of HIV/AIDS here in the U.S. And then, various reasons where, various cultural and religious reasons where we're not open to talking about sex, sexuality, condom use.
There's that shame that's still attached to it, the stigma that's still attached to it. The reason I was asking why the concurrent piece is because just recently Magic Johnson celebrated his 55th birthday, and he's HIV positive. And he, looks good and what that means. And then I also recently saw a documentary about Greg Louganis, the diver, who also and has been able, but these are men who have been in the public eye, who are able to get to the meds and the services, the access. Is access part of that also for us?
I think for us,
or lack of access.
So when you say for us, I have to break it to Africans because for us for Black folks could be different. For African Americans could be different.
And Afro Latinos too, because the Latino population has higher numbers too in HIV.
And I would parallel the story or the experience with Afro Latinas with African American immigrants. To tell you the truth. And so you asked sort of what is the issue, and I think. Definitely, African immigrants haven't been saturated around HIV prevention education, just like other populations here in the U.S., right? And so we can talk about Black gay men, we can talk about even Black women, to an extent. But African immigrants haven't been saturated around HIV prevention education in the same way. Also, you have to think about the countries that folks are coming from in terms of where those countries are related to HIV and AIDS, access to services, understanding what does it mean to go to the doctor in your homeland, right? And so how much of a struggle is it? What is the stigma around going to get tested in your home country? So all of these, we call it transnationalism, right? And so all these things that happen in someone's home country they pick it up and they bring it to us.
Absolutely.
They don't drop it off.
Exactly. It comes with us.
You know?
That's one of the lines. I mean, it's one of the lines where I constantly use that mindset.
Yeah.
Is the Dominican Republic Haiti conflict? It's like it's happening there.
Right.
It's happening here too because it comes.
It doesn't
it comes exactly.
So,
it comes with them.
Yeah.
What are some of the countries that we're seeing in Boston? The countries, the continent countries that are higher numbers here in Boston. Do we have that?
We do. I don't want to speak of it so directly because I think that's part of
the stigma.
Right, and understanding folks, telling folks that we're all at risk.
Exactly.
And I'm talking about black, white, Latino.
Oh, I like the way you just
we're
did
all
that.
At risk.
That was really good.
Let's be clear.
That
we're all at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And we all need to get tested. We all need to, know our HIV status. All of us do. And your partner's HIV status is not your HIV status. Okay. Some populations we got to work a little bit harder to get that message out. And one of the populations, the population that I'm from and that I have passion for. And so this really has this awareness day has really come from a mobilization, a grassroots mobilization effort. Right now, it's being led by my organization, Africans for Improved Access Program at the Multicultural AIDS Coalition. It's also being led by Hepatitis B Foundation, which is the national coalition focused on hepatitis B, and it's also being led by CHIPO, which is a hepatitis B coalition specifically focused on African immigrants.
Okay.
So all three of us are coming together to say that we need to, one, establish this day. And you work in HIV and AIDS.
Exactly.
And you know the importance of having an awareness day. The level
because we still have a level of ignorance about how it happens and who it affects. I mean, it's still baffling at this day and age to hear people make some of the most uneducated comments about the issue.
And so we know that having an awareness day can bring our issues as Africans to a whole nother level. We know that means that it's recognized by the federal agencies, where you're talking about CDC, Centers for Disease Prevention, whether you're talking about OMH, Office for Minority Health, or some of the other agencies that supports other HIV awareness studies. We know that if this day becomes federally recognized, it's going to elevate our movement to a whole nother level. And so that's what we're pushing for it to be established, so that we can start looking at what are some of the programs, the services that need to be in place, and what are some of the resources that need to be reallocated to our communities.
Exactly. So what is the day going to look like? Now looking at the page, so what are you planning for the day?
Yes, so this has been a two-year process. We started last year. So we started with a petition, which you can find also on this website, because we're still trying to get people to sign the petition.
So we want folks to sign the petition.
And
we're going to put the link on the Soulful Afro page so that you can go and get to it even quicker. So sign the petition, okay?
And then Hassan has brought up what we want folks to do for this year, which is to say that we want to celebrate or commemorate this day.
Okay.
So we're doing a social media campaign, right? So we use this app called Thunderclap, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I just learned about it, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, because there's so many, like all these links that you can use now.
It's so cool to me. So what this does is it allows us to have one message that goes out on a specific day to a lot of people, right? So Thunderclap says, sign up here. Either you can sign up through Facebook, Twitter, or Tumblr. Okay. Once you sign up, you'll be added to the supporters list.
Okay. And right now we're 61 of 100. Yes. So we want those numbers to go up.
We want to go up before September.
This is Soulful Afro. This is Soulful Afro. The soulful happenings in the community. So we need to make this number look big.
Yes. Yes. And so once you support with your Facebook, Twitter, or Tumblr, you'll be a supporter, right?
Okay.
So you're saying that this message that's already been coined, this message is allowed to be shown on your feed.
Okay.
Whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or Tumblr, right?
Okay.
What's also important is the number of social reach, right? So we have 100. Let's say we have 61 people at 122,000, right? The next person who's 62 can bring that number up to 222,000. thousands.
Because then anyone that views it.
Right. So it's about what is your network.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How many people can you reach? How many people can you touch with this message?
Absolutely.
So I want to be clear that I'm concerned about. I want both of these numbers to go up. Right. So I want the folks that got 10 people in their network, because there might be one person in your network that really needs this message. And I want the folks who got 10,000 people in their network, because we're spreading out, we're bringing awareness and spreading the information, right? So this is what we're asking people to do this year to commemorate the day. The day is September 9th. Right?
September 9th, folks.
September 9th.
It's right around the corner. It's going to be here before you know it.
Yeah. And so once you go on and click the link, Hassan, can we show the folks? Okay. So, yeah. So you'll see this, right? And so it will say add my support, right? So you have the option to also add your own personal message. Right? But this is the standard message that's going to go out. Okay. So then you add my support. So then you have to say, all this privacy stuff. So the first message is basically saying that Thunderclap can have access to your profile and friends list. That's the only way it's going to be posted on your thread. So they have to have access to that. Then you hit OK. And then it's saying that Thunderclap will post only this one message on your thread.
On that day.
Right? And you hit OK. Then you know that you're finished when you hear that you're supported. So this is just asking if you want to continue to get stuff from us. We're not sending out any more stuff, so you don't even have to worry about that. So you can say no thanks. Right? And so it will say thank you that you supported. Okay?
Wonderful.
Bam. So then what you can also do once you do this is you can spread the word through share, tweet, or you can reblog. Okay? So do either one.
What's the 5,000?
5,000 is your reach. So with
that Africa Radio Online, we can reach 5,000 people. All right now.
So that means that when it's posted on your thread, 5,000 people are going to see it. Right?
That's how we got this.
Right. So that's why I was saying that reach is important, but also every individual that does it is important.
Right.
So you can share. I don't know if you want to share, Hassan, but you can do that. I just want to point out that you want to put a message there? Or are you just cool?
What do you want to put in this next?
The Africa Radio, the Soulful Afro family is supporting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and type it.
Okay. See, we're doing it right before your eyes. Okay, this is when you
Yeah, this is the what are your glasses like?
I know, right? Where are the glasses?
All right. That just looks fabulous. So are you not excited?
Oh yeah.
Push the hashtag. Is it NAIRHHD?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Fabulous. Thanks, guys. So that's what
She
it's
brought
about.
the news.
Brown and black folks supporting each other. That's what it's about.
We validated it and we confirmed it.
Okay, so now you can go back. Now, once you do Facebook, you can go back and do Twitter or Tumblr.
Oh, okay.
Some folks got multiple things, But this also gives you a breakdown of what the day is. So I don't want folks to support it if you don't know what it is. Know what you're supporting. That's what we're about. Mobilization means empowering so that you know what you're doing and that you're doing it as an informed person, right?
What information here that you think you can speak to them that will pull folks in?
The first three.
So the first three right now we're reading is 40 to 70% of the people living in the U.S. with hepatitis B or foreign-born and African immigrants face the highest average chronic hepatitis B rates in the U.S. So that's one information to know. And also, HIV diagnosis rates among African-born population in the U.S. are 6 times higher than the general population. And September 9th is the National African Immigrant and Refugee HIV, AIDS, and Hepatitis Awareness Day, which Chioma is here to join us to bring that information. Thank you so much. But one of the things is it's still the stigma that comes with it. I am still stunned because and we need to be careful, because even though you have said this is African based because that's your focus, but we can also bring in people of African descent from Latin America specifically. Those numbers are very high from specific countries. I don't want folks that are listening in that are not fully informed on the issue to think that this is just about African immigrants.
It's about brown and black folks.
Exactly. How do we? What do you need to say to have folks come out of this is just about African immigrants, and to have them open up? It's like what we've been. The next segment is about Pan-Africanism. How do we open our minds?
Well, I think there's a history with. So we lost the us, right? I think throughout its history we lost the us. That's the one thing. The second thing is I think that too often we don't join in movements of other folks that look like us. Okay, and so one of the things I've come across, and even having this day, or working with folks to establish this day, is Black folks saying, why do we need a day for African immigrants?
Yeah.
And challenging that, right? And it's just going to split the community. It's going to split the community if you allow it to split the community. This is not about splitting the community. This is actually about us recognizing the beauty of our diversity and still being able to unite because of it, right? And so, in spite of it or because of it, right? And so, I think that we are too into separating ourselves and allowing that to be the reason why we don't join each other's movement.
And finding a common ground.
Not knowing that what's happening with Black Latinos is affecting who I am as a Nigerian American, right? Because Black is Black and brown is brown. Sure. And even within that, you're going to say something, Lisa?
What you said, your first point was, I think, educating everyone that we're all African immigrants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a true. Because the truth is, you're Black, you're brown, you have African descent. So I think educating that as well as what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a little deep. I don't know.
It goes to one of the things that came up that sort of, and still staying with this, but talking about speaking at the Pan-African Unity Dialogue last week in New York, is that you still have folks that don't know what the term Afro-descendant means.
Yeah.
Because they think Afro-descendant means Africa, and whatever. It's like, no, you're an Afro-descendant if that's your point of entry. Right. That's your beginning point. And no matter where you ended up and however mixed you are,
and any way you got
and that I finished in Panama with Spanish, and Nigeria finished with
broken English,
and Martinique finished in French. Where my father's family is from, is still imposed because of where we landed, but our common denominator is still that we are people of African descent, and it's shocking that even Black people, brown people, still don't have an understanding of that. And that creates the breakdown for us to not see ourselves in every issue that is affecting every Black and brown person.
That's exactly right.
Black Lives Matter is not
just also taking on a culture that's not ours, right? This competitive culture. That's not us.
We're not coming out of our way to support
each other. And so it's like there's $1, right? And it's already the Latinos and the African Americans getting that dollar. So now you want to slip in African immigrants, you're going to be taking away some of our resources. That's not the conversation. The conversation is how can we all work together for brown and Black folks, recognizing the different needs of our communities.
Exactly.
That's the conversation. And I have to say this, and me, you always sort of pull and push on this. But Latinos got that thing under control.
Oh yeah. They're pulling themselves out of it. They pull themselves
At
out
the
of
end of the
everything.
day, when they are at Capitol Hill, talking to who they need to talk to, the Latinos are Latinos. Okay?
Yep.
When they go home now, they go to the Mexican. They start breaking up into the various countries or whatever. But when they're at Capitol Hill, that's who they are. As Black folks, we have not.
And the thing is that even so, and then just like certain countries don't get pulled into the African context when they're from the continent, depending on what country it is and how big the country is and how big the Latino thing is the same thing.
Yeah.
Because then it's like Black Latinos don't get pulled into all these Latino conversations.
Yeah.
They were offended with Donald Trump, and like I recently, was quoted in the Latina magazine, and the question was, how does it feel to be a Afro Latina? I was like, well, the question should be, how does it feel to be a Black Latina? Because I don't get to jump up and go, oh, by the way, I was born in Panama, so treat me differently. Black, you wearing a dashiki and your hair is braided. What?
And they have the audacity to claim it.
Right. And I'm like,
honor and
legacy to you in Spanish, so you get, and then it becomes, so we don't see ourselves, it's like, it's what I've constantly said since the shootings have gone up 20 notches in the last year is Michael Brown,
the visibility of the shootings.
The shootings.
The visibility of the shootings.
Visibility, because this has been happening before. This is just making the news.
Murdered.
All those men and women could be from the Caribbean, could be African, and could be Latinos because of the diversity of our story.
Right.
But yet we still want to pigeonhole them.
Right.
So we really need a constant lesson. Not only to those outside of us, but even within us, that we are way more connected than they are making us out to be. I remember years ago, I saw Al Sharpton speak at a conference, and he said, well, we don't realize it, that we're all in the same crab basket, and the same people that are pulling the Latino down are pulling the African American down, pulling the African down, and they're sitting down, pulling us down while we're fighting amongst each other, and they're getting what they want to get done.
Well, see, I want to touch on that just real quick, because with that conversation is a deep conversation. Because if you're saying the Latina individuals are together at the State House, who are they? They're still Africans, and that's what people don't understand is, there's a type of Africa, of Africans, then they're separated from Latina to Native Americans to whoever they are. But at the end of the day, maybe they got it right at some point, but they're still Africans. And I think that's one of the conversations I wanted to have when I started African Radio, where people understand that you're still an African. And this separation by race or by color doesn't make any sense. Because at the end of the day, that Latina right there, with that corner store, you as a black person saying, I can't believe he moved over there and opened up a store, that's your brother. Exactly. He's still African.
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
But we don't. But it goes to, we have an upcoming conference coming up in September 18th and 19th, and our Friday night keynote speaker is Rosa Clemente, who's a Afro-Puerto Rican sister, and speaks about her blackness, and she's
lying. You cannot say
that they are not Black women. Right. They'll be like, what you talking about? But there has to be an education, because we have fallen for our ethnicity being our racial identity. And that is one of the biggest flaws within the Latino community. Puerto Rican is not your race. Puerto Rican is your ethnicity and your culture.
Right.
What is your race? And if it means that you're mixed, acknowledge that you're mixed, and acknowledge the Black African part of that mix.
But the people who put us in captivity, did they say, if you're 1% Black?
Oh, it doesn't.
And that's what it is. You trying to take it back,
but I think the complexity around this, because I think we have to acknowledge race. We have to, and not to say that it's right or that it's wrong. We just have to acknowledge it in the place that it's put us now in society. And the complexity around this is what skin color you walk around with.
Absolutely.
Because we have to understand that there's privilege that's given to people who look closer to white. That
there's colorism even amongst us.
That looks closer to black. So I can fully support, a light-skinned Latina telling me that she's African. I'm like, do it, girl. Just know the privilege that you're walking in and how you utilizing that privilege in order to make sure that your brown and black brothers and sisters who are darker than you are able to have opportunities just like you. So we have to understand we have to understand the complexities of race and how now race is operating in our society. Because I was in a conversation talking about race, and one person said to me, "Well, let's just eliminate race." I'm like, no, we
can't do that.
We can't do that because it's so embedded in our society. And once we eliminate it, then we no longer have a way in which a way that has been sort of marked or approved to say that, look, the people over here are in a much less privileged space than the people over here. And the clear distinction is race.
Exactly.
Very clear.
Exactly.
Race always floats to the table. Even floats to the top. Even when you put in classism, even when you put in sexual orientation, all these other things, race always floats to the top.
Absolutely.
And it's not about hierarchy, it's about understanding the way that oppression works, and then understanding about the intersect and the way various oppressions intersect. So it's not enough for us to say, yes, you African. It's also about you African, but you walk with a different privilege if your skin color is different.
How does that play into the issue of African immigrants?
That is complex.
It is.
I mean, it's complex because some of the same things that you talk about in terms of Black Latinos, right? Where Africans who are lighter are better. Africans are coloring their skin, bleaching their skin. The whole thing with North Africa versus all the rest of Africa.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So it plays in so many ways. Everybody what is that saying? Everybody loves Black culture, but don't nobody want to be black.
Black, yeah.
Right?
They want to walk around with it, wear it, dance to it,
and nobody
say fist up to it. But then, check this out.
No, but see, I'm white.
Take a break and come back.
Okay, so we're gonna take a break. Even though she said she was just gonna stay with it and she didn't want to think much, we just gave you all.
It's like off the video.
We know what happened.
It's like off camera.
We just her right in. So we'll be right back.
That's hilarious.